We're reading Bamidbar Chapter 9. This story beginning has a date. It's in the second year of Yetzias Mitzrayim, the first month. So we're going back to the date where everything really is happening here. So all of these stories are sort of surrounding these dates. And as we've discussed, this is explicitly before the story of the census in the beginning of the book, which was in the second month of the first year. So this is going back all the way to the day that the Mishkan was set up, which was Chodesh Nisan, the first month of the second year. And it's adding something that happened then. We could understand the dislocation because we had to finish everything about the Mishkan, the creation of the Mishkan itself, the census, all the things surrounding it, before we get to this, which is really a separate story, a separate thing. Now, what we have here is mainly a story of, as we've discussed, this is one of the prime examples of a mitzvah, the parsha of a mitzvah. This is like a parsha of mitzvahs, although it's also a parsha of a story. So in some sense, it's the parsha, and it's one of the only parshas that are like this. Parsha of a mitzvah of the Yidden doing in the desert a mitzvah that was given before. The mitzvah of Korban Pesach here was given already in Parshas Boy and commanded already that it should be every year. So this is really a story of the Kiyum HaMitzvah. Pesach is interesting in that way, that there's about 7 stories in the whole Tanakh saying how the people were Mekayim, how they did this mitzvah. So this is the first one. It's already in the Torah itself. And to that is added a mitzvah that was given in response to a problem that they had. So this is a structure that we find in many mitzvahs in Sefer Bamidbar specifically. There might be some of it in earlier books, but this is the most place where most of them are. And this is why I said this is like appendixes, fixing or adding things to mitzvahs and stories that were there before in response, and specifically in response to a certain thing. In other words, if we would generalize it, we would say that from here we learn that sometimes there's a new situation which requires a new psak, a new halacha regarding the mitzvah. Of course, we have the klal of Chazal, Ela mitzvah she'en navi resheh lechadish doveh me'ata, that this doesn't happen anymore. Only Moshe could do that, but I don't think it's so far-fetched to think that it does happen only in the way of halacha, in the way of Torah Sheba'al Peh. Sometimes when there's a new situation, we say, well, does this apply here? Should it make a difference? Things like that. It's not very different. But that's the thing of Sefer Bamidbar has such mitzvahs, and this is what we're going to read. So we read, in this time, in this date, in this place, in Midbar Sinai, Hashem spoke to Moshe and says, "V'yasav b'nei Yisrael sa Pesach me'ada the Yidden." B'nei Yisrael should do the Pesach in its correct time. And what is its correct time? As defined by Parshas Emor and as defined by Parshas Boi, which says the correct time. So this is really Hashem called being mazir them, reminding them to do something they already told them once. And there's of course a question, why does he have to remind them? But I think this is the logic of every story. No, they don't do anything here without being told. And we saw, for example, in the story of the Hagbolah, as Rashi says, Adam b'shas lifnei hamas v'b'shas hamas. So there's a special command to actually do it. So like there's 3 levels. Like there's the general command, and there's the command to actually do it, and then there's actually doing it. And this is the command to actually do it. And as it says explicitly, you'll do it in the 14th day of this month. And according to all its laws, according to its order, as you've already been commanded. So it's not like there's no doubt that this is referring to the mitzvah that was given earlier, and it's telling them to do it. And Moshe tells the Yidden that they should do it, and they do it. So that's the 3rd level, right? Hashem tells Moshe to do it now, and they didn't actually do it now. As Hashem commanded the Yidden, they do it. Now and this is, I think, all said here. Probably that's the answer to the question. Like, isn't it obvious that they did the mitzvahs? It's probably obvious. But the reason this story exists, or maybe even it happened this way, in order, so we should have the next story. Now, there were some people that were not able to do the Pesach. Why were they not able to do the Pesach? Because they were Tameim L'Nefesh. We already discussed Tameim L'Nefesh means Tumas Mes. They touched a dead soul, a dead body, a dead person. I think the Nefesh doesn't necessarily mean soul versus body, because you can't be Tumah to the soul, or Tumah to the body. But anyways, Nefesh means a person. And they could not do the Pesach, as we started over there, that if you're Tumah, you can't do it. And they come to Moshe and Aaron, they tell him, and we have a dialogue here, a very explicit dialogue, where Tumah, Lama Nigara, why will be not counted? It's interesting, because everything here is being counted. So Nigara, something like, why don't we count? Why are we deleted? Why are we reduced from being able to make the Korban Hashem, but me'ada in its right time, along with all the Yidden. And Moshe accepts this argument, accepts their complaint, and he says, this is interesting because there's later in the story we'll see many complaints where people say things similar, like why not me, why not this? And then apparently if you complain in this style of complaining, then Hashem gets mad. But here, this was a complaint or a kind of demand, which Moshe says, Imdu ve'eshma etzav Hashem lechem. Let me stand here, wait here, and I'll listen. I'll hear to what Hashem told me. And this is, of course, also a continuation to what we had in the end of previous chapter, where after the Mishkan, and the Mishkan was set up on Chodesh Nisan, there is a place to go ask Hashem things. That probably means he went to the Oil Moed and he asked him what to do. And Hashem answers, and he gives a command, Dabar b'nei Yisrael, gives a new mitzvah, and the mitzvah is phrased in the style of a mitzvah, in a very general phrase, in the way of Sefer Vayikra, Bamidbar ish, any man, it will be Tomei, or, and it adds, right? Since it's a general law, it's not only responding to the situation, it's giving the new law, like the way Chazal would say it. There was really the law before, but there was the story happened so that these people should be the cause of the law being revealed. But it's not like the law was created in response to that. This is really the law, and we can see this from the style of the pasuk. It's not a style of like, oh, so for today we'll do this. No, there's a general law that has a rule. This is how it works, and it's not only for you. It's also if you're b'derech l'choika. If you are in a far away, you can't reach the place of doing the Pesach. So the same thing. It's not specifically for Tomei, it's any kind of other way, legitimate way. Well, not if you did it on purpose, but a legitimate way in which someone was impossible to come to the Pesach. And it's not only for today, it's not only for now, lechem or l'dereseichem. It's for now or for the future generation. So this is a general law. Now, what will this person do? He will do a Pesach. When will he do a Pesach? On the second month. So this is also a story where we see very clearly all these stories were happening between the first and second months. So this is a story that's a bridge between the first and second month. Because if someone can't do the Pesach in the first month, he will do it in the second month. In the 14th day, is again the same time of the month, in the same time of the day, Ben Arbaim, he will do it, and he will eat it in the same way. He'll eat it with matzahs and meroidim. In the same halachas will not be allowed to leave it over until the morning. So the same halacha, they will not break any bones. He will do it along with the same rules of the Pesach. In other words, it's a real Korban Pesach, just not b'me'adeh. That's why we had the word b'me'adeh. It will not be b'me'adeh. It will be in a new me'ad, from the 14th day of the second month. And of course, since we gave this permission, we gave this set of second chance, so to speak, we have to remind you that this is only going to work for people who have unfortunately had this problem. But don't think that this is permission to just be late. If you're tired and you're not b'derech and you don't do the Pesach, then you're back to the regular law. We've already learned this in Parshas Bo, that if you don't do the Korban Pesach, you become kores. And why? We have again this word b'me'ada. He didn't do it in his time, and he was able to. He will suffer his sin himself. Now, there's one more law about Korban Pesach. I think this was already said in Parshas Bo. I'm not sure why it's repeated here. Some people understand that maybe a ger could also, if he becomes a ger, if he comes later, he could do it later. Not clear to me. If a ger comes and he will do Pesach, he will also do it according to all the laws of the Pesach. This is something repeated many times in parts like this. The same law will be for you, for a ger, for a stranger, a sojourner, a traveler, and for a citizen. Both have the same law. And as I've said, that's a repeat. Okay. Now we end this. This is the last mitzvah that belongs to this series, or in this part. We can see it's part of this story. And now we have a beginning of a new part of the book, I would say. The question of we should start it here or start it in the next part, I'm not sure. But we remember we set up all the machnas, all the camps in order to travel correctly. And here we have the story of how they travel. So the first parsha, which is till the end of this chapter, is again halachas. And it's set up almost as halachas or almost as like general rules. And then there's the application of these general rules when they actually traveled. So there's laws of how and when they travel, or rules. I don't know if they call them laws because they're not ledoiris. These are the prime example of a mitzvah that's not ledoiris, but it's how they traveled. It says in the day that the Mishkan was set up, the cloud covered the Mishkan. At night there was a kamare esh, a vision of fire. So maybe not necessarily a fire itself, but a vision of fire. Not clear. And that's how it will go. Always, this is of course, we already had this in Parshas V'Shalach. Before there was a Mishkan, there was a Esh at night and on a day. But now this Esh and on is on the Mishkan. And now when did the Eden travel? When the cloud raises up from the oil, goes away from the Mishkan, or rises up, that's when they travel after him. And in the place where the cloud stops, the place where it comes to a stop, that's where the Yidden will be chayna, that's where they will rest. And this is what it means, Al Pi Hashem. So Al Pi Hashem Yachnu, so Hashem, which is represented in his cloud, this is how he shows at least his presence with people. They travel along with him and they rest along with him. And here the pasuk goes into a very long elaboration, a lot of details of this rule, and it seems again to be unnecessary. There seems to be too many of these details, but I think that we should read it, like I said before, in the story of the Kabbanis of Nesiim. This is an expression of excitement, an expression of celebration. When you say things at length, it sounds nice. It's beautiful. So it gives us the long elaboration. And in a kind of a song, and I think the song has a refrain, which is Al Pi Hashem Yachnu, Al Pi Hashem Yisrael, as you can see in my organization. It's 3 times, and with slight variation, but 3 times. So there's like 3 parts to this song, and it says it 3 times. It's a poem, it's a song. Tells us how if the cloud is on the Mishkan many days, then the people keep their watch, they don't travel. And if it's only a few days, then we assume that the completion of the sentences, and then they will stay there only for a few days. Again, Al Pi Hashem Yachnu, Al Pi Hashem Yisrael. Sometimes it will be only for a day, for a night. In the morning they travel. Sometimes it's a day and a night, and then they travel. Sometimes it's a day, sometimes 2 days. Sometimes it's a month, sometimes Yomim. So many days, many months. For all of that, it's the same rule. As long as the honor is on the Mishkan, they rest, and when it rises, then they travel. Al Pi Hashem Yachnu, Al Pi Hashem Yisrael, Mashmeres Hashem Shemona, Al Pi Hashem Biyad Moshe. That's the end of this chapter.